George, do you see there as being any, and I'm pun intended here, any alternatives to private equity here?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I briefly mentioned it earlier, but one is it was a company called Verdad, and a guy did a study, and maybe you guys can link to the paper, but he essentially found that you could really, with small cap value, you could essentially replicate the exposure of private equity with publicly traded stocks. Now you're going to have the volatility, but his study was pretty compelling. The other thing that I've been thinking a lot of is this. So why not just buy the stocks of the private equity firms, the publicly traded stocks of a basket of private equity firms?
There
Because,
you go.
well, then you get, not only do you get exposure to the private equity deals, because that's their business, you also get exposure to their ability to raise money, which is their new growth driver, and you have liquidity. So in my mind, it's like, why would you go for just one private equity deal or two or funds when you could really own a diversified approach across a couple different companies and get the benefits of not only private equity deals, but their fundraising ability. And if it doesn't go well, you could still get out tomorrow as soon as the markets trade. So those are kind of, to me, the two big, I think, big alternatives to traditional private equity.
Interesting. I'll admit I've done some cursory research. I think there is potentially something there. Of course, Dave, our compliance disclosures here, we're not suggesting anyone go out and buy specific tickers or stocks here. But George, that's an interesting thought, and I actually have looked to see if how that would have played out. And again, this is looking backward, but Cambridge, which is a big institutional consultant, and they try and track the performance of private equity writ large, just in general, because public stocks, if you want to get like index like exposure, what do? Well, most people are going to go out and buy something that tracks the S&P 500 or the Russell 3000, some index. They say you can't invest directly in an index, but these exchange traded funds or ETFs, it's basically the same thing. Well, Cambridge actually tries to track an index. It's impossible to fully capture everything, but they do publish stats on that. And I did look at some stats over the last 10 years. And you look at the annualized returns of the Cambridge index, I'll just take that at face value because I think Cambridge is the gold standard for tracking these types of stats and this data. And then you look at over the same time frame, you look at the returns of some of these large publicly traded asset managers, and it's eye-opening. The outperformance of the publicly traded guys, in the face of these private equity funds and this entire universe having the benefit of, again, 10 plus years of low to near zero interest rates. So it's an interesting take, George. I kind of like that.
To understand this, you compared a private equity fund index to a basket of private equity publicly traded stocks, and the stocks
Correct.
outperform the index.
Demonstrably.
Interesting.
Yeah, demonstrably.
I have one other point, if you guys don't mind, if I make.
Go ahead.
I write research, and maybe we can link to this, but one of the things I've found over time is the best returns tend to come when there's a lot of general money flowing to a space. And you can find evidence of this historically, but like AI, right? I mean, except for the last few days, there's a lot of money going into AI, so those stocks go up a ton. But regardless of the skepticism that I might have about private equity, when you read these transcripts and you see what people are saying and you see the sales push, a lot of money is going to go into the space. And so even if it's for potentially different growth reasons, fundraising as opposed to zero interest rates, I mean, I do think that so much money is probably going to head into the space because of the larger wealth management sales apparatus that it'll likely continue to go up. And personally, I think based on what you just said and what I've researched, I would buy a basket of the stocks if I wanted exposure to that. But I guess you always have to kind of temper skepticism with where the money's going to go.